Welcome to this explainer. Grab your detective hats because today we're cracking one of endodontics' most notorious mysteries using imaging data. We're going to build a rock-solid guide to differentiating between two of the most common periapical lesions you'll encounter, granulomas and radicular cysts.
Okay, let's jump right into the deep end with a problem that every dental practitioner faces when staring at a dark spot on a conventional X-ray. How do you diagnose something you literally cannot see? You've got a patient, pulpal necrosis, a non-vital tooth, and an inflammatory response buried entirely within the bone. You know a lesion is there, for sure. But figuring out exactly what kind of lesion it is, that fundamentally dictates your entire game plan.
And honestly, this right here brilliantly illustrates the headache. Take a look at these two periapical radiolucencies. To the naked eye, on a standard 2D film, these suspects look basically identical. Yet beneath the surface, one is a solid granuloma and the other is a fluid-filled cyst. Now, this isn't just some academic trivia, it's a massive clinical fork in the road. Why? Because a granuloma might heal up beautifully with standard root canal therapy, but a true radicular cyst, that often requires actual surgery, like an apicoectomy, to properly resolve.
So, here's our roadmap to solve the case. First, the apical look-alike problem. Second, the clues hiding in 2D radiographs. Third, the 8.2mm rule. Fourth, advanced 3D imaging. And finally, the histopathology gold standard.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the apical look-alike problem. Let's talk about their shared origin. So both of these lesions actually start the exact same way, as a response to bacteria invading the root canal system, kicking off chronic apical periodontitis. But then, they take totally different paths. Think of it like a sponge versus a water balloon. A periapical granuloma is the sponge. It's a highly vascular, heavy, solid mass of repair tissue. It is just packed with inflammatory cells trying to wall off the infection. A radicular cyst, on the other hand, is the water balloon. Prompted by that same inflammation, cells in the periodontal ligament start proliferating and form a distinct epithelial lining that encases a fluid-filled cavity. Solid tissue on one side, fluid sac on the other. Moving right along to Section 2, clues in 2D radiographs. Let's do our initial forensic sweep. Now, we all know 2D imaging crushes 3D anatomy into a flat picture, which makes a 100% definitive diagnosis nearly impossible. But we can lean on some really strong statistical trends here. Because a cyst enlarges slowly, usually driven by osmotic pressure pulling fluid into the center, the surrounding bone actually has time to react. The result? Radicular cysts typically show up with well-defined corticated edges in almost 83% of cases. Granulomas, though, are dynamic, active battlegrounds of inflammation. They tend to just blur right into the bone, presenting ill-defined, non-corticated borders in about 69% of cases. So the sharpness of the border is your very first big clue. But we need more than just borders, right? Let's hit Section 3, the 8.2mm rule. This specific number, 8.2 millimeters, is basically a clinical cheat code. Researchers nailed down this exact diameter threshold by running some heavy-duty ROC curve analysis. When you're evaluating one of these lesions, you want to measure its longest diameter and make sure you include 1 to 2 millimeters of the surrounding bone in that measurement. And when you look at the breakdown, the predictive power of this number is incredible. If the lesion is under 8.2 millimeters, boom, you're looking at a granuloma 83% of the time. If it's over 8.2 millimeters, it points to a cyst with 79% specificity. And hey, if you're dealing with a massive lesion over 2.0 centimeters, the data shows it's almost exclusively going to be a radicular cyst. So yeah, size is a massive forensic indicator here. Okay, let's upgrade our tech for Section 4, advanced 3D imaging and radiomics. This is where digital imaging meets high-level math. Radiomics uses tools like Heralic's gray-level co-occurrence matrix, or GLCM. What it's doing is analyzing the spatial relationship of pixel brightness values. It mathematically reads the texture of the lesion. This is an absolute game changer because the computer can finally see the density difference between that solid cellular sponge and the fluid water balloon, even when our eyes can't spot the difference on a monitor. And the distinctions are just undeniable when you look at the CBCT parameters. A granuloma shows a cloudy soft tissue density with high pixel variance, because, it's a messy web of cells and vessels. A cyst shows up as a perfectly homogeneous low-density cavity. Check out the angular second moment, or ASM, which measures local homogeneity. If that ASM value is greater than 0.10, you are looking at a radicular cyst with literally 100% sensitivity. The algorithm is basically reading the fluid dynamics. But, of course, the investigation isn't over until the final verdict. Section 5, the histopathology gold standard. Even with all of this incredible imaging, if you go in surgically, like to enucleate a suspected cyst that's causing the kind of visible swelling we see here, you have to test the tissue. Examining it under a microscope remains the undisputed gold standard. It gives us the physical, tangible proof we need. Under the microscope, we leave pixels behind and look at the actual cellular architecture. On the left, you can definitively see the non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. That is literally the rubber wall of our water balloon. And on the right, those are cholesterol clefts. These fascinating little needle-like empty spaces are left behind by dying inflammatory cells. While they pop up in granulomas sometimes, they are highly characteristic of a radicular cyst. So for a definitive diagnosis, pathologists are hunting for that central fluid lumen and the epithelial lining. And get this, in over 81% of cysts, they'll find a highly organized 3-layered wall. You've got an inner lining, a middle zone packed with inflammatory cells, and an outer collagen wall. You might even spot Rushton bodies in about 10% of cases, these weird, glassy, hairpin-like structures. If you see those under the lens, the mystery is officially solved. We've gone from the blurry shadows of 2D X-rays to the mathematical perfection of radiomics, right down to the microscopic cellular level. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought as we wrap up. As our AI and texture analysis tools get sharper and sharper, mapping out fluid dynamics and density with incredible precision, are we looking at a future where digital imaging completely replaces the need for physical biopsies? Will algorithms eventually retire the microscope? It's a pretty wild frontier. Thanks for putting on your detective hats and joining me for this one.